Welcome to Guided, your weekly sanctuary where we blend the wisdom of the Enneagram with the art of intentional living. I'm your host, Evie, and you're so welcome here. Guided is all about helping you, the modern woman, find your flow in a world that's often all hustle and no heart. Whether you're navigating a career pivot, diving into creative pursuits, or just figuring out how to take better care of yourself, Guided is here to support you. This podcast is like a weekly chat with a good friend, one who's passionate about making your life feel good. At Guided, we believe in living with intention, fostering emotional well-being, and finding joy in the everyday. We tackle the big stuff like overthinking, setting boundaries, and avoiding burnout, all while keeping it real and relatable. Think of this as your go-to spot for practical tips, soulful conversations, and a reminder to break free from the grind. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Thank you for choosing to make Guided a part of your weekly ritual. If you're ready to step into a life of intention and empowerment, then hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Guided. I'm your host, Evie. I'm so glad you're joining me for today's episode on conquering self sabotage. So grab a cup of something delicious and let's dive in. In previous episodes, we've covered Enneagram basics, the impact of hustle culture, and how to find balance. If you're brand new to the Enneagram, I'm so excited for you. You might want to head back to episode 1, 2, or 3 to learn a little bit more about your Enneagram type. But today we're going to dive into a topic that affects many of us, self-sabotage. We're going to explore common self-sabotaging patterns for each Enneagram type and look at strategies to help us break free from these patterns. Hallelujah. So let's dive in. What is self-sabotage? If you don't know what it is, wow, lucky you. Self-sabotage is when we consciously or unconsciously hinder our own success and well-being. It's those moments when we get in our own way, even when we know better. The Enneagram can provide a unique lens to understand why we self-sabotage and how we can break free from these destructive patterns, because that's what the Enneagram does. The Enneagram looks at what motivates our behavior, not just the behavior itself. We're always looking for the why when we're doing Enneagram work. So let's start by identifying common self-sabotage patterns for each Enneagram type. The reformer. So reformers often set impossibly high standards for themselves and others. I would know. I am one. Their self-sabotage comes from being overly critical and perfectionistic, leading to burnout and dissatisfaction. I set my standards so high, there's no way I can meet them, which then leads to procrastination. And procrastination is incredibly self-sabotaging. It's very annoying. Could I have started this podcast a long time ago? Yes. Did I get in my own way? Yes. That is just one example of how the reformer might struggle with self-sabotage. Okay, type 2, the helper. Helpers may neglect their own needs in favor of helping others. Sound familiar, type 2s? Leading to exhaustion and resentment. They often self-sabotage by overextending themselves and not setting healthy boundaries. If that sounds like you might be a type 2, because this is absolutely classic type 2 behavior. And it looks really altruistic, but actually it's not great, because this exhaustion and resentment is causing you a lot of problems, type 2. Type 3, the achiever. Achievers can become overly focused on success and external validation. So therefore their self-sabotage manifests in workaholism and neglecting their personal lives, often leading to burnout and a loss of identity without work. Who are you, type 3, if you're not at work? Who do you want to be if you're not at work? Okay, type 4, the individualist. Individualists might dwell on their perceived deficiencies, keyword being perceived, and compare themselves unfavorably to others. They self-sabotage by getting stuck in feelings of inadequacy and failing to take action. Type 5, the investigator. Investigators can become isolated and overly guarded. They self-sabotage by withdrawing from social interactions and not seeking support, leading to feelings of loneliness and stagnation. That word is so key for type 5s as well. Stagnation. How often do you find yourself feeling stagnant, not knowing how to get going again. Type 6, the loyalist. Loyalists may struggle with anxiety and indecision. Their self-sabotage comes from overthinking and doubting their own capabilities, which can paralyze them and prevent progress. Type 7, the enthusiast. Enthusiasts avoid pain and discomfort by constantly seeking new experiences. Their self-sabotage involves overcommitting and not following through, leading to scattered and unfinished projects, looming and hanging over them. Type 8, the challenger. Challengers might push others away by being overly confrontational and controlling. Does that sound familiar, type 8? They self-sabotage by not allowing themselves to be vulnerable or accept help, which can lead to isolation and unnecessary conflict. Type 9, the peacemaker. Peacemakers tend to avoid conflict and prioritize harmony, sometimes, meaning often, at the expense of their own needs. They self-sabotage by being complacent and not asserting themselves, leading to unfulfilled potential. Whoa! Go back and re-listen to them if you need to. But how specific are they? This is why I love the Enneagram. It's so specific. None of this, yes, we all struggle with self-sabotage. How? Why do we struggle with self-sabotage? What does that look like? Let's get into it. I love being as specific as possible. And if you don't know your Enneagram type and you're stuck between a few of those self-sabotaging issues, scroll down in the show notes of this episode and click on the link for my free Enneagram quiz. It's going to take you to a free quiz. You might need to hit pause or do it at the end or complete it at the end of this episode. But this is a great way to begin your Enneagram journey really gently, and it's going to point you towards one specific Enneagram type. So recognizing these self-sabotage patterns is the first step towards change. We want to break free from these behaviors and harness the power of the Enneagram for growth, of course, but we can't do that without recognizing that these patterns, these self-sabotaging patterns, are happening. And note that every Enneagram type does struggle with self-sabotage. We're not singling anybody out here. This is something that we all struggle with. It's super common. It's super normal. It's very human. So recognizing with compassion is absolutely the first step towards change. Okay, yes, I can be really perfectionistic at times. I see that in myself. I honor that in myself. I'm ready to let go of that. Let's move forward. So here are the strategies on how to break out of that, how to disrupt that narrative for each type. Type 1, accept that perfection is unattainable. Set realistic goals and celebrate your progress, no matter how small. Type 1s, I want you to set the realistic goals and then tell another human what those realistic goals are so that they can then tell you whether they are realistic or not. Because these pie in the sky goals are costing you life, okay? Invite somebody else into the goal-setting part of the journey. It's going to help, trust me. Type 2, recognize that your worth isn't tied to how much you do for others and set boundaries to protect your well-being. Your worth is not tied to how much you do for others. And a really great question to ask yourself is, who asked me to do this thing that I'm doing? That's Suzanne Stabile again. I think I've mentioned her before on the podcast. She's a fantastic Enneagram teacher and author, and she herself is a type 2. But a great question to ask yourself is, who asked me to do this? This really lovely, nice, kind, wonderful thing. And if nobody asked you to do it, maybe stop doing it. Maybe the really nice thing that you're doing for somebody else, could you just do it for yourself instead? I wonder. Type 3. Take time to nurture your relationships and invest in activities that bring you joy outside of work. What would it look like for that to be your focus for the next 6 weeks? I think you'd be surprised at the version of you that's waiting for you on the other side of that 6 weeks. Type 4, cultivate self-acceptance. You are wonderfully and uniquely made. There is nobody like you. And that is so important. That is so wonderful. That is not a deficiency. That is only good news. And if you can, from that place of knowing that, of believing that, of trusting that, begin to take small and actionable steps towards your goals. You're going to feel better when you start moving again, when you start doing again. Type 5, reach out and connect with others. I know it's so hard. It's so mean, type 5, but I truly believe the best version of you is on the other side of practicing that vulnerability and allowing yourself to receive support and feedback. Type 6, trust your instinct. Challenge your fears by trusting your own instincts and build that confidence through small, consistent steps of taking that decisive action. Type 7, embrace the discomfort by committing to just a few meaningful projects or commitment and then follow through. It's going to help you learn to find joy in the present moment because you're not going to be spread so thin, running around, totally focused on the future. Type 8. Gosh, type 8, I would love you to practice some vulnerability and open up to others. By allowing yourself to delegate and accept help, you're going to build stronger and more collaborative relationships, which in turn is going to show you and teach you that you don't need to go straight to combative confrontation and strong words, that you can connect and communicate with others just through asking and talking. It is possible for you. So for type 9, we do need to break things down into manageable steps in order to start building momentum. So today I would love for you to make a list of maybe 3 or 4 things that you would like to achieve by the end of the year. And I would love for you to share that list with trusted people to help you set those personal goals. By allowing people to check in with you to see how you're doing, it's going to help you wake up your voice and begin to assert your needs. You can do this. Okay, now let's talk success stories, because first and foremost, I am an Enneagram coach. I've worked with so many wonderful people who've successfully overcome self-sabotage through understanding and embracing their Enneagram type. For instance, last year, I was coaching a type 3 achiever who was burnt out from ignoring her needs because it was slowing her down at work. But by recognizing her need for external validation, she was able to catch herself every time she went looking for the external validation. Instead, she would implement self-care strategies specific to her. And what this meant is that she was able to start leading a more balanced and satisfying life. Instead of going straight to feed that self-sabotage goblin, she was able to challenge that need for external validation and begin to start meeting that need herself. Incredible. Another favorite example is my type 6 loyalist who was so paralyzed by indecision. But through our sessions, she learned to trust her instincts and take small, consistent action, which at the beginning were teeny tiny steps. But this allowed her to build confidence, reduce her anxiety, and rather than giving in to the self-sabotage, she was able to challenge it slowly but surely on a daily basis, which then allowed her to make huge decisions about her work. And in fact, she has changed careers. She's changed her work. It's something that she's always wanted to do, but didn't know that it was ever going to be possible for her because of that feeling of being paralyzed by indecision. Now, these are just a few stories, but they do illustrate that change is possible with self-awareness and the right strategies for you. Not the right strategy for your friend, not the right strategy for your partner, the right strategy for you. You can overcome self-sabotage and align with your true self, but you need to start getting specific about it and challenging the need that your self-sabotage goblin has found. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to remind you that my calendar is open to book in for a blueprint typing session with me. So if you're looking for a deeper, more personalized understanding of your Enneagram type, where we explore your self-sabotaging, your unique traits, your growth opportunities, then that is the next best step for you. And that is linked in the show notes for you today. Remember, concrete self-sabotage is within your reach. If I can do it, so can you. And by understanding and harnessing the power of your Enneagram type, you get to gift yourself the joy of breaking free from these destructive patterns. You get to start living a more empowered, authentic life. If that is something that you want to do, if year in, year out, you come back wishing you could make those changes, but not knowing where to start, we're here. Let's make those changes. If you find yourself struggling with the same issues year in, year out, they're probably not going to just go away by themselves. We're in the last quarter of the year, 2024. Let's make those changes stick. If you want to learn more about what we're talking about today, there's a blog post linked in the show notes, which I think you'll find really helpful. And do me one last favor. Notice this week when self-sabotage rears its ugly little head. Where do you notice that self-sabotage showing up for you? And see if you can put in a boundary, a step towards a more aligned version of you. Look after yourself, and I'll see you next week. If Guided the podcast resonated with you, why not share it on your socials or send it to your friends? And if you have a spare moment, I would love it if you could leave me a review. These small gestures are free and they're invaluable in helping me amplify the reach of Guided the podcast, connecting us with more empowered women who are eager to increase their well-being. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop with our latest episodes. By subscribing, you'll stay connected and receive a weekly dose of inspiration directly to your inbox. Thank you for being a part of our community, for showing up, and for your commitment to personal growth and self-discovery. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay curious, and keep exploring the depths of your own inner wisdom.